Hello everyone, welcome to Nigel and Kath's Adventures. Glad you could join us. Hello, welcome to Nigel and Kath's Adventures. Today we're at the Heage Windmill, which is near Belper in Derbyshire. It's looking really exciting and the wind's blowing the sails, so come along with us.
Thank you very much for coming and visiting Heage Windmill this morning. The more people we have come to visit us, the happier we are, because it gives us a chance to keep the windmill running. We're all volunteers here, nobody gets paid for anything, it's just that we've either got a love for old buildings like this one or an interest in the people who actually worked here 200 years ago, which is something that is of interest to me. But the first mention of windmill here at Heage was the first mention was in 1791 when an advertisement appeared in one of the local papers asking for a stonemason to come and build a tower windmill here at Heage. That advert went on to say that all the materials will be laid in place, and from that you might imagine that all the sandstone blocks will be here, ready for putting one on top of another, a bit of mortar in between, and the way it goes. Wasn't quite like that. All the stone was here. The only problem was it was still attached to the ground. So before anybody could start and build a windmill, they must have had a quarry team here, team of quarrymen, to quarry the stone out of the ground. And the quarry face is just immediately in front of the windmill here, and I'll point it out to you when we get outside there. We do know that by 1798 the windmill had been built. We don't know who built it, but it had been built, and by then it was capable of milling grain into flour. So we always date the windmill as being 1797, not 1798, 1797, which makes it 227 years old. First thing I'll mention, because it's significant as we go around the windmill, we've got a model here of our windmill as it is today. It's got the sails, the white cap there with all the machinery inside it, and the fantail at the back. The idea being that the sails must always point into the wind where they're at the most efficient and at their safest. If the wind changes direction, which it may well do today, the fantail at the back there will pick the wind up. And by means of rods and cogs and bits of machinery, which we'll see when we get into the windmill, it can turn the cap round together with the sails, can turn around 360 degrees so that the sails are always pointed into the wind. It started life as a four-sail windmill, and it's had something of a checkered career. Started life as a four-sail windmill with just a canvas sheet thrown over each of the sails, which worked okay. In fact, it was a good business in the early days. The only trouble is that was time consuming for the miller, because every time he wanted to stop the sails going round, he virtually had to bring each of the four sails down to ground level so he could tie them off to keep them safe. But it worked, and it was a good business. First significant date is 1850, when the windmill was already nearly 60 years old. And a family from Sheffield called the Shaw family, they came and bought the windmill, and they also milled here, which was a bit unusual in those days. The owner of the mill usually employed a miller, but they did both. They were the owners and the millers. The first thing they did was to change the four sails from common sails for the canvas sheet to what they call patent sails. And it's patent sails we've got today. It's the shutters which open and close. So the miller can quite easily control the speed of the sails. It's also less work for him in having to wrap the sails up at the end of the day. And if he can control the speed of the sails, he can, to a certain extent, control the type of grain, the type of flour that he is producing. That's 1850. Went on okay for a number of years until 1894. 1894, something went wrong with the machinery. That fantail at the back of the windmill seized up. There was a storm blew up, quite a violent storm, and that storm blew from the back of the windmill, and it blew the sails and the cap and the fantail completely up the top of the windmill, and it all finished up in a heap on what is now our show car park at the top of the drive there. And if one, there's a photograph of that at the back here. There you can see the windmill. The owner, Mr. Shaw, is stood in the middle of the photograph there, stood on top of his foresails, and also in the picture there is his 12-year-old son Isaac, who was the last person who actually milled here at Heage. The Shaws were very good business people, and they very quickly rebuilt the mill, but this time they put 6 sails on. Just that little bit more efficient than 4 sails. Not by much, but a bit more efficient, but they put 6 sails on. And he went on okay as, again, a good business until the First World War. In the First World War, a lot of the people throughout England, a lot of the men throughout England who were tilling the fields, preparing the wheat, preparing the corn for milling, they joined the army and they lost their lives in the battlefields of Belgium and France, as we know. So the amount of grain being produced dropped dramatically. So England started importing grain from North America and Eastern Europe, and that grain was being processed at the port of entry. So the need for a windmill here at Heage, in the middle of Derbyshire, in the middle of England, really ceased to exist. And the Shaw family abandoned the windmill. And that coincided with, in 1919, it was hit by lightning. The fantail at the back of the mill caught fire, and that really destroyed any chance of putting it back together again in those days. And the Shaws just abandoned it. So all the way through the rest of the 20th century, pretty well the 20th century, it just fell into decay, it fell into disuse. And the photographs of the back on the wall there, if you want to come back in here when we finish, you can do by all means. The photographs show the rate of decay. And my memories of Heage Windmill going back to the mid-1950s, I think it had got one part of one sail remaining, and that was all. I was brought up in Milford, just down the road here, and me and my mates used to come up here on our bikes, push bikes, and play around the windmill. You couldn't get in, it was all boarded up. Being 11-year-old lads, we knew how to get in anyway. And I can remember playing on this floor with all the machinery from the cap. Inside the cap had come down through 2 floors which had rotted, and it was placed on this floor above here. So they got a windmill. The Shaws sold it. I think they sold it for about 25 quid to a relative of theirs, and everybody thought she was going to make an application to turn it into a dwelling house, which is what had happened to a mill down in Belper. But no application was made, not until the 1990s, when a descendant of the Shaw family made an application to turn it into a dwelling house. And the planning authority turned down that application because they recognised the importance of what was left of the tower as an historic building. So something else had to be done with it. And the Derbyshire County Council actually bought the windmill. They tidied it all up. They put pretend sails on, which didn't do anything, but they looked nice from the outside. And they actually started doing tours around the windmill as well. To the eye of the stones. Put a bit more in there, I think. Feed grain into the centre of the stones, just as they do downstairs. And when we turn the quern, if you look carefully, you'll see the flour. That grain will come out of the centre of the stones as flour. Just one problem. Some time ago, a colleague of mine was demonstrating the quern, and he got a lady on the tour who was obviously of Middle Eastern descent. And he was about to put his hand on the quern, and she said, "Stop, you mustn't touch that quern. It's bad luck for a man to touch the quern." And anyway, it's women's work. That's what she said. Well, I'm not going to touch it. You can have a go if you want.
I don't think it's women's work in this country.
I'll tell you what, I'm not superstitious. Now, this is about the speed the tower stones go around downstairs, about between 80 and 120 revolutions a minute. Look carefully.
Yeah, that's very
That's
clever.
women's work. That's women's work.
Hi, Nigel and Kath's Adventures. We've just finished going around the Heage Windmill. It's wonderful. The engineering, the sails going round. We've really enjoyed it because we love historical buildings. If you're in Heage or anywhere near, please come and see because the volunteers are fantastic. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It's absolutely free. Give us a like and a comment and we'll see you later.